Welcome back. Well, the breakup of TomKat, not usually a topic we cover on the show, but this is why we are tonight. It has focused new attention on Scientology. It's a controversial religion, reportedly, and it drove a wedge between the power couple as the public face of Scientology. Tom Cruise repeatedly extolled the virtues of the religion and really condemned any others for if they frankly disagreed with anything that the religion stood for. But the religion that claims to make you a better, more successful person may have played a definite role in that split. Now, published reports suggest that Katie Holmes, who was raised Catholic, was worried about her daughter Suri's future involvement in said church. Now, the religion, which was founded 60 years ago by science fiction writer L. Ron Hubbard, is now led by David Miscavige. Since its founding, the religion, it's been through numerous controversies, lawsuits, investigations. Scientology has been depicted as controlling and manipulative, even enacting policies that split up families and place heavy financial burdens on its followers. Debbi Cook, a former Clearwater Scientology leader, Clearwater, the headquarters of the religion, recently settled a lawsuit with the church. Now, during testimony, she described how she and other religious workers were physically and mentally abused at Scientology's desert compound near LA.
He ordered his secretary to slap me, and she slapped me so hard I fell over into the chairs. One time Mr. Miscavige ordered his communicator to break my finger if I didn't answer his question.
Now, Cook also described being imprisoned in something called the Hole for 7 weeks. She and others being held there for underperforming, in David Miscavige's opinion.
It had bars on the windows, and the one entrance was guarded by security 24 hours a day. It was where you ate there, you slept there on the floor, and you never left with the exception of a brief period to go take a shower and come back. The place was infested by ants, so ants would crawl on you. And there was a 2-week period during that time when all the electricity had been shut off as ordered by Mr. Miscavige, and this was of course in summer in the desert, and so the temperature in there was about 106.
Now, criticism of the church isn't limited to her by any means. Even some has come from David Miscavige's own niece, Jenna Miscavige Hill, who left the church in 2005. She says she was forcibly separated from her parents at a young age and was forced to perform physical labor.
These projects range from rock hauling, taking rocks out of the creek, picking them up, hauling them up the hill, putting them in a pile, and these were usually to make rock walls. One time a kid got a bucket of ice water dumped on top of his head when he was late, even though it was 6:30 in the morning.
Now, it's stories like these that could be motivating some folks to leave the church. Carmen Lowen, the ex-wife of Jason Lee, star of the comedy My Name is Earl, says Scientology ruined their marriage. And one of the more prominent people to leave the church, Marty Rathbun. He used to be Tom Cruise's counselor. He now writes a blog educating people about what he says is wrong with the religion. And finally, Tanya Castle, a former secretary to David Miscavige, recently described how she fled a Scientology compound over razor-sharp fence wire. All right. So I got all this as a backstop, and I'll only give you one other piece of information. Over the years, whenever we did this issue, more than any other issue that I ever covered, whether it was abortion, gun control, all the hot-button topics, never have I gotten so much pressure from folks related to a constituency, in this particular case, Scientology, with legal letters, etc., when we were just discussing and in an open environment here, whatever that's worth. Well, joining us now to explain, Tony Ortega, editor-in-chief of The Village Voice, and Tony has written extensively on the issue, so you're the one. Because frankly, in the media, nobody wants to touch this subject. Let's be honest, you don't need the headache in your life, because Scientology, they will spend X amount of dollars just to make you cease and desist here. You must have, I'm sure, run into that yourself over the years.
Well, now the floodgates are open because the celebrity divorce changed everything. So now, especially in the United Kingdom and in Australia, the newspapers are just going crazy. And you're seeing a lot more coverage here in the United States. You're absolutely right. It has been difficult for journalists over the years. Scientology is a group that's very sensitive about how it's portrayed. It's very secretive, and it's made it difficult for journalists. But right now, I think there's just so much interest in it, and the news organizations are very interested in covering it.
One thing for me is I'm always reticent discussing someone else's faith. I mean, I'm practicing Roman Catholic, and I'll take my church to task, but I don't like others doing it, if you know what I mean. It's like you don't attack your own, you can fight in your own family, you don't want somebody else. So while I was reticent about that, a basic question was asked, I think this morning with Andrew, is this a religion or is it a cult?
Well, I think it's important to separate beliefs from practices. Scientology does have some odd beliefs. I mean, the basics are that they believe we are all immortal beings that have lived countless times before, and through their processes we can sort of rediscover that nature. It's, you know, an unusual thing, but maybe not more unusual than other religions. But what gets Scientology into trouble again and again is not those beliefs, but the way they treat people, the way they exert incredible control over their members, their culture of interrogation, the way children are treated. I did a story today about a woman who became an employee of Scientology at 9 years old, and then at 12 years old signed a billion-year contract and began working 100-hour weeks for about $25 a week. That's how children are treated in this organization, and that's got nothing to do with religion.
Where do finances work into this? Because as I understand it, and again, I have a rudimentary knowledge of this religion, but you basically are rewarded by escalating up, in effect, in the eyes of the powers that be in the church, and that's what you aspire to, greater and greater levels of, I guess, performance. But there's an economic component too, isn't
there? Yeah, that process I talked about where you're trying to rediscover your true nature occurs over a number of levels that get more and more expensive, so that by the time you're in 6 or 7 years, you're paying $1,000 an hour for counseling. And it's a very quid pro quo setup. I mean, you pay a certain amount and you get delivered a certain level. The IRS decided that that was okay in 1993 when they gave them tax-exempt status, but it's still controversial today because there's no other religion on earth that basically charges you for spiritual enlightenment by levels and with a price list.
The rumors have always been out there that because there are a lot of celebrities that are attached to this, Tom Cruise obviously, Travolta, others, that's great PR for them, but if there's ever any problems, it also will blow back on the church because of the controlling nature that at least seems to go hand in hand. There's also rampant rumors that whatever skeletons there is in the closet would make it very difficult for somebody in Hollywood here to ever leave the church, because the church certainly would use that. Is that purely anecdotal, or is there any evidence?
No, there's 40 years of court documents showing that when people give up their secrets during these counseling sessions, whatever they say is written down. And like in other religions, they're promised that it's confidential. But we see time and time again, when a person leaves or criticizes the church, suddenly that information shows up on anonymous attack websites or in other ways it's used against people. And again, this has been established in court records. I think some celebrities are worried about what they've said, and that might keep them in. I think some more celebrities are starting to leave, but they're being quiet about it. There's a very toxic policy in the church called disconnection, which is if you leave and you criticize the church, you're excommunicated. In their language, they call it declared a suppressive person, or SP. Once you become an SP, everyone else in the church must completely cut off all contact with you, even if it means splitting up a family. And so I really believe Lisa Marie Presley, for example, recently left Scientology, but she's not saying anything about it publicly because her mother's still in. And if she says something, she will be declared an SP, and again, the family gets split up.
One of the things that always confused me about this, among the many, is that people join this not for some, well, I don't want to ascribe motives, but that if I do this, I'm going to become more successful. It's almost like an infomercial on, how to make $1 million quick. Is that,
well, listen, this is kind of one of the heartbreaking things, is when we're talking about these young kids in particular who dedicate their entire lives, they're not doing it to get rich. I mean, they're getting paid $30 or $40 a week, and they're working 100 hours a week. They really believe they're trying to make the world a better place. But some of these young folks in particular, their schooling stops. They read nothing that's not written by L. Ron Hubbard. They have no access to television or the internet. They're really, and once they come out, they tell me, I was living in a bubble.
How many people are we talking about that are members?
Well, this is one of the controversial things. Scientology will tell you they have 10 to 12 million members around the world. The best evidence suggests that they have more like 40,000 active Scientologists in the world. When they say millions, they're talking about the number of people who have ever touched a book, taken a course over their 60-year history. In fact, the president of the church admitted that
if somebody reads
in a deposition.
Dianetics, they call them a follower. Okay.
Exactly.
Now, is this because this guy Miscavige is just a bad guy here, is turning people off and breaking this up, or is it because this has been festering for a long time here and finally you got a lot of people breaking from, I guess, leadership?
I think Miscavige inherited a lot of really toxic policies from L. Ron Hubbard, but he's also he's in kind of a losing game right now where he's trying to get more and more money out of fewer and fewer people. And it's becoming such a burden on the people that are there. You see more and more people leave. And they're not leaving because they're giving up the ideas of the church. They're giving up because they really don't like the leadership and they're having a real crisis. The church is literally splitting apart right now.
And it seems a lot of families get split up because of this, because of the controlling nature that comes from at least some folks within this church here. Your gut say this is the beginning of a pretty challenging cycle here for this church?
This divorce could not have come at a worse time with the way it's splitting apart and two recent stunning defections that you didn't introduce in the intro that we broke the news on. One of L. Ron Hubbard's own granddaughters, who had lived her virtually her entire life at the secret base east of Los Angeles, escaped a couple of months ago. I just found out about it a couple of weeks ago and wrote about it. She brought out word that just before her, David Miscavige's own father and stepmother escaped from the base. And it's my understanding they plotted their escape for 6 months. So it's deeply embarrassing for Miscavige that his own father has now abandoned the religion. And it's where that news is most
escaping the base.
Where that news is most devastating is it's going to get to the other Scientologists, and it's going to add to the crisis.
Well, Tony Ortega from the Village Voice here. I'm glad we can even talk about this. As you know, we've been talking about doing this for a while here, and I never thought the time was better, but you're the perfect person to talk about it. Great job.
Thanks
Thank you
for
so
having me
much.
on.
Absolutely.